Good evening, everyone. Um, my name is Bosco Mulwa. I work in St. Paul's University, mainly doing network administrative tasks, but also I am an instructor for Cisco CCNA, but soon I'm hoping that I'll be a Mikrotik instructor as well. So I have a brief presentation just to illustrate our experience using Mikrotik, because we've been using Mikrotik for quite some time, and there's a lot of benefit, as you will see in the next slides. So just a little bit about St. Paul's University. St. Paul's University is an ecumenical private chartered university offering competitive academic programs in various fields, including computer science and IT. And here with me, we have quite a number of computer science students who have attended this event. They are very much enthusiastic about Mikrotik and Mikrotik products. They want to learn and hopefully adopt Mikrotik equipment. So why Mikrotik? St. Paul's University began implementing Mikrotik-based solution in the year 2011. This was motivated by some of the key aspects highlighted here. One of them is cost consideration, and I'll be explaining about that. The other one is ability to integrate with other equipments and technologies, because as you know, in a university setup, you're working with different systems. You're working with ERP, you're working with library system, you're working with logon servers, and all that. So we'll be looking at some of the systems which we've managed to maintain Mikrotik, but at the same time work with them. Another very critical benefit is remote administration. We have a total of 4 campuses across the country, and sometimes you are required to work in a campus that is very many kilometers away. So Mikrotik Winbox is a very powerful tool, allows you to log in, administer the network, and all that. Mikrotik is also relatively easy to set up and administer. So those who are coming from a Linux background, you know that it's command line and all that, but if you have the fundamentals of networking, then implementing that on Mikrotik becomes very, very easy. On my presentation, I'll focus on intercampus connectivity. I'll discuss all this, but I'll mainly be dwelling on the intercampus connectivity. So some of the Mikrotik products that we use in our university, we have like our main, the router board 1100 AHX. We have router boards, RBs. We've deployed Mikrotik SXTs, especially where we need to supply internet to hostels that are far apart. We've adopted Mikrotik SXTs. Also for indoor wireless access point, we use CAP2Ns, which comes in handy with CAPS Manager, which is very efficient. As I mentioned, we have very, very interesting cost benefits when you implement Mikrotik solution in your organization. Remember, this is not limited to a university setup. So, for example, you know that virtual private networks, If you don't know how to configure them, somebody will configure them for you and put a license key and sell that solution to you in form of OpenVPN and other vendors. But if you know how to, Mikrotik has a very powerful VPN solution that integrates with Radius and other technologies. It also comes in handy with the inbuilt firewall, very powerful firewall. I think Mikrotik has one of the most powerful firewall I know. If you say drop this traffic, trust me, nothing will pass. If you say allow, it will allow. So, of course, in a university setup where you're dealing with students, like nowadays it's all about betting and all that. So some of that traffic, you may want to restrict it in your network. So we've implemented, we've used Mikrotik Firewall. Then again, we have secure dedicated tunnels for communication across campuses, communicating from Limuru to Nairobi, Nairobi to Machakos, Machakos to Nakuru, etc. Then again, Mikrotik products are relatively cheap if you are to compare them with other products with the same features. They are relatively affordable. So integration with services. Personally, I'm an open source person. I like implementing open source solutions as opposed to licensed products. So like for caching my web pages and DNS and all that, I use Squid Proxy Server. So how do you maintain, for example, Squid Proxy Server and at the same time use Mikrotik? You just go to IP firewall, there's a rule, and then you redirect all traffic. All HTTP traffic that comes to Mikrotik, you point it to your Squid Proxy Server. So those two systems can be able to work together that way. Another very interesting solution is radius authentication. This one was actually very challenging because now, like you have a student who has an email address, who has a computer lab, they need to access the computer lab with a different account. They also need to access library services. They also need to access wireless. So if you give them so many passwords, you will be doing support work the entire day. So we endeavored to have a single sign-on system. And what we did, we maintained our Microsoft Active Directory with all the records. But now with Mikrotik, for example, now if it's a VPN user, they are able to use their credentials. We just point the VPN service from Mikrotik to our Radius server in in Windows Server. Then you are able to use your login credentials. When it comes to a service like wireless, Cap2 and Mikrotik work very well with Radius servers. So it has a Radius service. All you need to do is integrate that service with your Radius server, in this case Microsoft Windows Server, and then the same credentials you used for VPN, you use them for wireless, and then again, of course, the ERP services and the machines in the university, you point all of them, and then you only have one account for everything. That one minimizes administrative tasks. Then again, we have digital VoIP service. We need to communicate between one campus and another one. And to minimize cost, Mikrotik, you can use Mikrotik to create a bridge, Ethernet over IP that has been well mentioned, is very effective when you're creating bridges. You can also use GRE and any tunneling protocol. We've used a combination of GRE and also creating bridges across campuses, and I'll be illustrating that. Still on the same platform, Mikrotik, I'm not done with it. We've managed to host, we have a block of public IP addresses. So with the university resources like the student portal, the staff portal, the e-resources, library e-resources, all of them, we've been able to host them ourselves, therefore cutting the cost of having to do that from service providers. So, of course, you only need to do a destination NAT, and you don't actually need to assign a public IP to your resource. You just maintain a private IP, but you do destination NAT. Others call it port forwarding. So I've talked about Squid, caching proxy for web that reduces bandwidth and improves response times by caching and using frequently requested web pages. Like in our case, we have subscribed to very many online journals and ebooks. So if you download an ebook, for example, and somebody else wants to read that book, if you have a caching server, it becomes, the browsing experience becomes very exciting. Microsoft Active Directory and Mikrotik. To guarantee security and ease administration of user accounts, we have centralized Active Directory and Radius services to provide, as I've mentioned, the VPN. Mikrotik VPN users are authenticated by the server. We also have all wireless users and university portals, e-learning, etc. And the most interesting thing is that we have centralized Active Directory, but we have different sites in different campuses. So but thanks to the integration between the campuses using Mikrotik, if I move from one campus to another, I don't need a different account. I'll still maintain my existing account. I'll log in with my account in Limuru. If I go to Nairobi, I'll use the same credentials. Nakuru, Machakos, the same. Digital VoIP, as I've mentioned. Of course, one of key things that you should have in mind is cutting on costs. So you don't need to use your mobile phones to call across campuses. So you do that by having your IP phones, and then you create dedicated tunnels. But in this case, we used the bridge, and the reason is because if you use like a VPN service, you'll find that it is one way. Someone is able to call, but they are not able to hear the other side. But if you put a dedicated tunnel, then you can have communication full duplex. Web-based applications, you can have as many as possible as long as you have public IPs and you have your Mikrotik router board there. All you need to do is have different port numbers for different applications. Right. So I'm going to show you a diagram of how we have done our wide area network using Mikrotik. And that is our WAN diagram. As you can see, we have our main campus is based in Limuru. So we have Limuru here. Then we have other campuses. We have a campus in Machakos. We have another campus in Nakuru. and Nairobi campus as well. All these campuses, the infrastructure is based in the main campus, the main infrastructure. That's where we have our data center. So the ERP servers, the library servers, the VoIP servers, and all that, they are stationed in Limuru. But all these other campuses need to access these services. So we have utilized GRE tunnels, but I have to say that you can still use Ethernet over IP. You can still use IP to accomplish the same. But in our case, we've used GRE, and it works perfectly well. Yes, those are the services that rely on intercampus connectivity. So if you wanted to set up point-to-point, not point-to-point, but an enterprise network, what do you need? Number one, you need Mikrotik router iOS. It could either be a router board or an licensed Mikrotik operating system. The other thing, you need public IP addresses on both sites. If it's, for example, Safari Park to Moyale. Moyale is a town in Kenya for the foreigners, remote town. And then you also need to have a network, an internal network, and you can do that by having private IP addresses. Preferably, I'd advise that you use a /30 because it only gives you 2 IPs, one for this site, another one for the other site. The third one will be what? The third one and the fourth one, if it's a /30. One will represent the network, the other one will represent the broadcast, and then you remain with one for site A and the other one for site B. So it's a form of security, because if you have like a /27, somebody can play games and assign themselves IP addresses. So I'll take you through how you create a GRE tunnel step by step. Very easy, I think 5 slides. And from there, you can be able to create your own GRE connection, connecting one site to another site. The first step, you need to create or add a GRE interface. And on that interface, you need to define on the local address, you specify the public IP address of site A. So site A, for example, is Safari Park, and site B is CBD. So site A public IP address, you define it under local address. Then remote IP address, that is site B, you define it for CBD. Then the next step, you assign an IP address for your GRE interface. You assign an IP address, and in this case, we've said that you do a /30 IP address. Of course, now that you have the interface, you can give your interface names which are easy to relate. For example, if it is Nairobi, Mombasa, you say site Mombasa to Nairobi. If you're in Mombasa and you log into that router, you say Mombasa to Nairobi. The next thing, you have to specify a route, because you could be having more than one network in your segment. You could be having 5 networks, you could be having 10 VLANs. So for example, you only want to allow the network with the servers to be able to be accessed from those other sites. but not anything else, the network with the servers. So you specify site network to be accessed from site A network to be accessed from site B. And then on the gateway, you specify that I will pass that traffic on the GRE tunnel. That procedure, you do it in site A, and then the same exact procedure, you repeat it in site B. But now you use, now of course, different addresses. If you had used a public IP address for Nairobi, now on the other side you use for Mombasa, like that. After that, you have to test your tunnel and see whether it's working. So if it is a resource or a server on the other side, you just need to ping that address. And then if you are able to ping that resource and it has a private IP address, then you know that your GRE is working. But again, whatever you're pinging has to have a private IP address, because if you're pinging something with a public IP address, then it could be using other routes. So yeah, basically you access, if it is a ERP, if it is a resource that is an intranet resource, you test it. So, any questions? Any questions? All right. If there are no questions, then I guess I'll finish my presentation. Thank you very much, Mikrotik, for organizing this event.